Okay, so we arrived at the final part of our class, and in this part we're going to talk about mixing. I'm going to take a closer look at how to set up gain staging in the mixer and all the different volume controls that you have along the way. And also I'm going to talk a little bit about compression and EQ and how to set up your master. So let's get started. And so let's quickly review our signal path in FL Studio. So if you remember from the basic tutorial, our signal starts at the channel here. And it passes through the first set of volume controls, which is right beside the channel. And as you can see, when I move this, the one at the top of the channel here, when I click on the channel and open it, is also moving. So these are linked together. But then there's one additional volume control in these miscellaneous settings here. When you switch to the miscellaneous tab, you will find another volume control that's independent of these. So you can use this for automation, for example, or just an additional volume boost or cut at some stage if you need it. And from there, the signal will pass through the effects rack and then down to the insert fader and through the routing cables here at the bottom. And then we have one more volume control at the send level. And then the final master fader volume control. And so it's important to understand all of these volume controls at each stage, because when we're working with our signal in FL Studio and we're sending it through the master and we're sending it through the insert and individual plugins on the insert and then arriving at the master, at every stage we have some control over the gain or the volume of our signal. And this is essentially the understanding behind gain staging, is knowing where you can adjust the volume when you're arriving at different stages of processing in our signal path. And so adjusting these volume controls will be before anything hits our insert plugins. And then from there, when we adjust this fader, it adjusts how much of the signal we're feeding into the master. And we also have this additional volume control here, as I mentioned earlier. And when you have lots of inserts with lots of signal passing through them, with all of your instruments summing up at the master, it becomes quite easy to actually overload our mastering plugins or individual inserts as well. And that's why there's an additional gain control that you can insert into the effects rack, and it's called a fruity balance. And so if I insert this fruity balance as the first plugin on my master, now I actually have the ability to control how much signal I'm passing through the mastering plugins. And even if my signal from all of the inserts in the mixer is coming in a little bit too hot into the master, I have the ability to turn all of them down with this just one gain plugin and be able to control how much signal I'm sending into the effect. So even if I completely overload our insert 1 and I send way too much signal to insert 1, as you can see right now, I'm clipping the insert, I'm clipping my master, everything's just getting distorted. But if I turn the balance plugin on the master down, now you can see that we're actually receiving a clean signal at the master. And the reason being is because we're overloading our meters, we're not actually distorting the signal in the signal path. So mixers in the modern DAWs have a lot of headroom and have a 32-bit float, which means that it's a really large word length and we can fit a lot of information. So overloading our mixer tracks is actually not damaging the signal at the insert stage. And the clipping that we hear is actually the clipping at the sound card level at our digital to analog converters that can only handle 0 dBs. So using the Fruity Balance plugin, you can actually fix a lot of clipping issues if you have too much signal coming into the master from all of these inserts. But then the concern becomes sending too much signal into our plugins. So if I leave this at this extreme setting, at this extreme loudness level, into insert 1, and I'm gonna place a limiter in here or a compressor. When I press play, you see we're already sending a lot of signal into our limiter. And so even without setting any of these settings at the compressor, we already don't know even where the level is. And starting to set this threshold, I'm not sure where it's actually setting any of these settings up, because all of these settings become completely not functional. And so fixing this, I'm just going to turn this signal down at the channel level and sending a reasonable amount of signal. Now I can start setting my compressor up and actually getting it to work the way I need it to work. And so this is the concern when you're working with signal, is that when you send it into our plugins, we want it to be entering our plugins at a reasonable level. That way we're setting the controls and we're not overloading the plugin and sort of using up the entire dynamic range of the plugin itself. So a lot of these effects and plugins and compressors are set to work at a sort of nominal level, and it's just basically anywhere below 0 dB. So we don't want to send stuff that's already way too hot into our plugins.